we will see. Now it is not your guilt related inferences that leads you to irrational beliefs are behind the feeling of guilt, basically. It's not only the inference, but after that there are certain irrational beliefs. They are there in the mind, and then the feeling of guilt is there. In guilt, self-downing is there. What is self-downing? Putting yourself down. Not putting yourself down about that act, but putting yourself down as a person, whole person. That's the entire important difference between guilt. That's the guilt. In sorrow, which is less intense than the guilt, in that I feel bad about the act. But in the guilt, I feel bad about myself. That is the difference. Say for example, I have shown you a couple of examples in my earlier slides. There were a couple of examples. Like these are the examples which I have shown. These are all the things which are possible in life, which will happen. Right? Are you going to feel very happy and excited when negative things are happening in life? That means what? We will not feel positive about negative things. Right? Negative emotion will come in the mind. So, there are two types of negative emotions. One is healthy negative emotion and other is unhealthy negative emotion. Guilt is unhealthy negative emotion. Then what is the alternative for guilt? That is sorrow or remorse. Remorse is a healthy alternative, or regret we can say. Regret is a healthy alternative for guilt. I will just explain. Can I? Yeah. Right. And that is called A, or it is called also called as happening or activating event. And then C. C is what? Consequences. Consequences. There are two types of consequences, three types of consequences. One is what emotion you feel. Then there are thinking consequences. And there are behavioral consequences, which I will explain. Something is happening and you're feeling it, something, right? Outside something is happening. But there is B also in between. B is what? Belief. You will not feel directly about whatever is happening. Your evaluation, your thinking will be also there, right? People, they don't get only disturbed by what happens to them, but they further make themselves disturbed by what they think about what happens to them, right? So, in our emotional disturbance, whatever is happening outside do contribute, and major contributor is my own thinking, attitude, belief. That is the most important difference. In emotion, as I said, there are two types of emotion. One is healthy negative emotion, and other is unhealthy negative emotion. Up to healthy negative emotion, whatever has happened is responsible. But from healthy negative emotion to unhealthy negative emotion, my internal belief is responsible. Guilt is unhealthy negative emotion. That is what I already said. And regret or remorse, regret is healthy negative emotion, right? Say for example, you failed to remember the birthday of your mother. Let's take this example. This has happened. You failed, right? Now there are two options: either to feel guilty or a regret. How will I feel guilt? I absolutely should not have forgotten my mother's birthday. If I have this rigid internal belief, then what will happen? I will feel guilt. But then what is regret? I will prefer, I wish अगर मैं भूलता नहीं था तो अच्छा होता था, पर अभी भूला है because there is a possibility of happening this, and it is not a must that I always must remember my mother's birthday. I am a fallible human being. So on this time I failed to remember my mother's birthday. This will create a regret in the mind. In guilt, like this is I, and person is having many traits, positive and negative, right? I failed to remember my mother's birthday is one thing which I did. If I feel bad about it, I will feel regret. But if I feel bad about myself because I remember I forgot my mother's birthday, therefore I am a bad person, whole evaluation, then I will feel guilt. And that is what the first slide is. Guilt and self-downing. The first common self-downing in guilt. First, how do I put myself? There are ways in which I put myself down. The first, I am bad. Because I stole stationery from my workplace, therefore I am a bad person. Actually, this act of stealing is bad. But in guilt, what I tell myself that I am bad, I am a bad person, and I absolutely should not have done this, which I will tell you later on. Right? So that is a very internal, rigid demand. That is the reason. But what happens? Many people, they believe for my UNE also whatever is happening is responsible. But we are not talking about that. Actually, it is not UNE. Say for example, 10 people who have forgotten their father's birthday or mother's birthday. Will all 10 people will feel exactly the same? Will all these 10 people will feel guilty?
No.
Why?
Because everyone will have a different concept.
Yes, everyone. That means what? Everyone will have a different belief, different concepts. That means what? What we are thinking also contributes to our emotion, especially the evaluation part. And in that evaluation, the most important, irrational beliefs. Because I forgot to wish, or I forgot my mother's birthday or father's birthday, it is terrible. Again, I will go to guilt. It is bad, unfortunate, but not terrible. I will move to regret. So that means what? My thinking contributes, especially irrational beliefs contributes to my guilt. And how do I put myself down? Let me give you some example. Because I failed to give charity, I am a bad person, right? So this person has failed to give charity. That act is bad, but here in guilt, I put myself entire down because therefore I am a bad person. Because I hurt my sister's feeling by saying that I didn't like her new dress, I am a rotten person. So again, evaluating entire self. So first, most common self-statement which is being used in guilt, that is I am bad. Right? You have some question?
Guilt means rigid and regret is flexible.
No. The guilt is unhealthy negative emotion.
It's rigid, you mean?
Which comes from rigid and dogmatic belief. That is the outcome of that.
Is the egos involved when we are suffering guilt? Is the egos of
What do you mean by ego?
Ego, the false I, the wrong things. Is this the egos involved in this?
Can you give any specific example about that?
That means I did.
Yeah, I understood. Can you give a specific example what exactly you did so that we can...
Where I feel I am the doer.
So then what will happen? You are the doer. See, you are doing some positive and negative acts in life. But if you feel I am, see, if you have done positive thing and if you evaluate your entire self with that positive thing, then also that is also a problem. Say for example, let me give you an example. Some people identify their positive traits to I. Let me give you an example. Say for example, I have seen some of my relatives or some people where they relate them total self to money. I is equal to money. सबसे बड़ा रुपया. And then I have seen in some cases जब वो पैसा डाउन केस आता है ना, तो they feel मेरा वैल्यू ही कम हो गया है. Right. So we talk about this unconditional self-acceptance, you know. So, and in other way, some people may think it as an ego, right? But whereas negative evaluation of self also is a problem, just like a positive evaluation of entire self is a problem, same way negative evaluation of self is also a problem, right? Say for example, if I am being treated badly by others, that is bad. But because I am being treated badly by others, therefore I am a bad person. That is my own self-evaluation, right? And I absolutely should not have treated badly is again rigid belief. So belief which are there in the head are mainly responsible for guilt or remorse. There are different beliefs behind remorse or regret and different belief behind guilt. I am less good than I would have been if dash things have happened. This is again another way of putting yourself down. Jack has failed to live up to his moral code. I am reading the example only. By not giving charity, he can still make himself feel guilty by believing, I absolutely should not have given to charity, and since I didn't, I am less good than I would have been if I had made a charitable donation. So here he is rigidly demanding that I absolutely should have. So this is one more. Then I am selfish. Another important thing. This is a major problem, especially in India. I will explain after some time, or I will explain now. See, if you experience chronic guilt, you feel guilty often across situations. It is likely that you tend to be selfless and put the interest of others before your own. That means what? My own emotional interest is secondary, and the interest of all significant others is primary. And if I put my interest first, then I feel guilty. In other words, I sometimes use that words. You know, in India में काफी लोगों का philosophy कैसा है लाइफ का, लोगों को खुश करो, खुद की वाट लगाओ. तो and then जब वो खुद को खुश करने की कोशिश करते हैं या खुद के बारे में सोचते हैं, तो they feel guilty. So when they say no to somebody, they feel guilty even for irreasonable request, because others' interest first and my interest last, or doesn't matter. So because of that, when you even think of putting your own healthy interest before the interest of others, you feel guilty, because you believe I must make sure that others are catered for before I go what I want. And if I put myself before others, then I am a selfish person. So I again put a total label on myself that I am a selfish person, and I put myself down if I keep others' interest first. And if I keep my own interest first, then I tell myself, oh, I am selfish. The important thing, I will explain from another perspective the same thing. We have three ego states. One is parent, adult, and child. There are three ego states we have. When we are in the parent ego state, these ego states are what? When we communicate with others, that time these ego states are reflected. In simple language, these are three states of mind: parent, adult, and child. When we are in parent ego state, we copy thinking, feeling, and behavior from parental figures. Whoever our parental figures are, mother, father, and those people who have played the role of parent, religion, grandparents, teacher. These are all our parents, right? What is adult? In adult reality, I am in here and now. I focus on here and now, right? Now, if a small child do not listen to parent, what usually parents do? They scold, they beat the child. That means what? Not listening to parents means scolding. Not listening to parents means beating a child. Right? Not listening to parent means danger. Not listening to parent means threat. Punishment, right? Now this perception the child keeps in his head, in his or her head, and the child grows. How our parent ego state is formed, whatever commands, whatever things from our parents are given, they are stored in parent ego state.
They become a belief system.
That makes a belief system, right? From that particular parent, right? Now, if this child is growing now, that's why I say one statement, our parents not only give birth to us, they give themselves to us, they live through us. So now parents are physically not present, but mentally they have entered in the head of child. And in the parent, if displease others, driver is there, please other tendency is there. लोगों को खुश करो, अपने बारे में मत सोचो. So what happens? ये कमांड कर दिया गया है, तो क्या होगा? The same command the person will give it to himself or herself, right? जो कमांड बचपन से दिए गए हैं, वो कमांड आदमी अपने आप को देगा, right? And not listening to parents means what? Punishment, threat. मतलब क्या लोगों के बारे में पहले सोचो, अपने बारे में मत सोचो. So that is what. But what happens? How person trap himself in this? That not listening to parent means punishment. So whenever person try to think about himself, that time he gets internal punishment, and he or she again comes back to that pleasing others. So it becomes an internal compulsion. There is no internal permission to think for oneself, and the moment the child tries to think about himself, then I am selfish, putting oneself down. What happens there? The person follow all this from adapted child ego states, where it is very loyal and listens to parent. But in this process, the free child gets suppressed. Free child is our energy, real self, one of the part of real self, which is suppressed and then which sulks inside the head, right? And guilt, what happens? Because compulsively the person is following that particular commands, and then the person, I'll give you the example. Say for example, internal mind में ऐसा rigid belief है कि सवेरे 6 बजे 5 बजे ही उठना है, very strong internal belief. और एक दिन क्या हो गया? You slept at 2 o'clock in the night and you got up at 8 o'clock. How that person will feel?
Bad,
very bad. Guilt will come. And not that this act is bad, I am bad.
Guilt will come, but he should say, okay, I slept late, so I got up late. Then
so what happens? This reality is bypassed. This reality or objective thinking is an adult ego state, right? But what happens in many cases where internal rule is very strong, you have to follow.
The reaction is immediate.
Reaction is immediate. So this internal rule is, if it is very strong, then what happens? Immediately, because what parents want, parent wants to run its own institution. And anyhow the child, internal parent is very strong, so then that belief will become rigid, because the language of parent is what? Internal controlling parent. Must, should, have to. So and that forms the basis of rigidity. So this internal parent will punish the child for not listening to parent, right? It will not see the reality. This adult will be bypassed. And that is the what we are talking here is how we can see the things from adult also, right? How we can create internal permission in nurturing parent. In parent there are two ego states, controlling and nurturing. Controlling or critical parent, all these commands which are given are from controlling parents, guilt based especially, and we are creating a permission inside the head from nurturing parent that it's okay, right? Because this has happened, because you slept at 2 o'clock, so it's okay to sleep up to 8 o'clock. So that is what. Let me give you one more example. Say, ऐसा एक नियम है इंटरनल कि खाना खाते समय झूठा डालना ही नहीं है. You went to one place और क्या हुआ कि प्लेट में लिया और एक आइटम is not suitable for your system, then you decided to leave. पर इंटरनल रूल जितना स्ट्रॉन्ग होगा, rigid होगा, you will not see the reality. The person will not see the reality. The person will come back to again guilt. More. That's why Dr. Eric Berne said, internal rules, especially rules are made for fools. That is what this very famous statement of Eric Berne, who is the originator of transactional analysis. So that means what he's talking is that you have to see the reality and then respond accordingly. That is what this is. I'm talking from Rational Emotive Behaviour Therapy perspective, and other perspective is Transactional Analysis perspective about guilt, TA, that is called TA, right? Now, the important thing is there, it's important to create internal permissions to think for ourselves. That it's okay to think for myself. I'm not a bad person when I keep my emotional interest first and safeguard this child from this internal punishment, what the child gets from the parent. So this is one of the things which, one of the self-downing statement is being used in guilt. I hope this is clear, right? Let me give you one more example.
But in relationship and all that, we very often do that. We put ourselves and our other interests before.
See, when we do that from adult ego state, then it's okay. By understanding reality, when you are doing it by choice, not by compulsion, not by internal compulsion, then that is absolutely fine.
On a particular day, there is a wedding, which is wife's relative wedding.
Just a minute, sir.
Wife's relative wedding.
I will come back to you.
And a good best friend wedding is there. Because I got an important intellectual activity and I'm interested in going there. But saying no to this also creates problems in the house.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I just don't know what to do because I very strongly want to go here. You know, my heart and soul, everything is in that.
Right.
But,
yeah, a very good example which you have brought forward. In fact, like this can happen so many times. Right? Those who are working women, they want to earn and then they are not able to give attention to the child. Right? Like this can happen with men also. It can happen with anybody. So that means what? We cannot do. We will do something wrong. Yes or no? Either if I do this, there is some right involved, and if I then that other will suffer. That means what? In life, there is a possibility, or that I will do, not that I will do all the time right. Sometime I may do wrong things.
it is like a catch-22 situation.
True. And that is why it's not to demand that I always must. That is what all ethical moral code, what first 3 slides, what we have seen. That is the reason. So this is a very important question. Yes, sir, you were saying something.
Sometimes we have to please others. अगर हम लोगों को कोई sweet नहीं खाने तो हम लोग खा लेते हैं to please others.
Yeah.
Then how to say no? Why we are called to say no?
Yeah, that is also another important thing, because the important belief in that, if I say no to other person will not like me, and he must or she must like me. If that person doesn't like me, then I am no good or I am unlovable.
Impressed.
Yeah, and in fact I have decided to take one session only on this. Log kya kahenge? This we have kept it because it's a very big.
This happens even when people offer prasad and all that.
Yeah.
But you,
Yeah.
There is a book.
That's.
There is a book when it says say no when you have to say no.
Yeah.
People say yes when you have to say no.
You don't say yes when you want to say. And I have got copy and I've got one more book. When I say no, I feel guilty. If you want, I will send you the e-book. I have got e-book of that book. So that's the belief is what? For others' emotion, I am responsible. That is the belief. See, if I say no and that person feels something, for that I am responsible. But what we are talking, for our own emotion, unhealthy negative emotion, I am responsible, and for others' emotion, they are responsible. See, the important point is what? Another thing. We hurt others in life sometimes. We hurt in the sense we will do something which you say no, will other person feel very happy and excited. That means we do certain things which others don't like. Right? So that means what? Then demanding that I must not hurt and harm anybody's feelings, that is a problem. That comes from that rigid philosophy, which I will focus more on that.
but you can take an adult decision to make adjustment.
Yes, that is where, because we cannot have cake and we cannot eat it too. So that is how it's important to resolve priorities.
Right.
What is priorities?
Yeah.
That,
Choose.
yeah, and that too from flexible philosophy, right? So that is the thing. Now we will move on to one more. I will not explain now this. A lot of explanation is there. How I am selfish and all. I have already given some of them. Fourth, self-down judgment. If I don't deserve good things to happen to me, I only deserve bad things. So this is another way of putting oneself down. Now we will talk about those three parameters. Which three parameters which I spoke at the beginning of the session?
Omission.
Yes. What is guilt? I have broken. You have broken your moral or ethical code. This is the first thing, and I have given a couple of examples. Then you failed to
Commission.
commission and this.
Omission.
So we will see now in detail what are these three things. What do we mean by breaking moral or ethical code? Those who came late, they will also understand now what exactly where we are moving. The first, breaking moral or ethical code. Now, I hope this difference is clear. Regret and guilt, healthy and unhealthy. And our goal is moving from guilt to
Regret.
That is the meaning of overcoming guilt.
Correct.
Right. So what is about this? What is irrational, rigid belief of this code violation? I must not break my moral or ethical code.
Under any
Right.
circumstances.
Yeah, under any circumstances. So again, it is a, say for example, रमजान ने किसी ने रोजा रखा है, तो अगर वो गलती से वो ये निकल गया तो you understand, जिसका rigid belief रहेगा, that person will feel guilty. जिसका flexible belief रहेगा, that person will feel remorse. Flexible belief I'm talking, right? Again, this can be रमजान में ये नहीं करना चाहिए, या say for example 5 बार नमाज पढ़ना चाहिए. Let's I'm giving you the example. And sometimes because of some reason the person is not able to. So again, this is applicable for all religions, not only all situations. Because this is what we are talking is moral and ethical code, values also. If I fail to, it will come in the second. If I fail to, here I have done wrong, like by commission, right? In the second, the example namaz nahi pada hai, that is omission, right? So that is the thing. Same way, many times what happens in confession box. Confession, you know that confession box? उसमें confess करते हैं, especially in Christianity it is there. क्या होता है, सामने से फीडबैक नहीं मिलता है ना उधर को ही, तो वो पता नहीं हमको कि वो व्यक्ति खुद को डाउन कर रहा है, मैं पापी हूँ, मतलब मैं पूरा ही बैड हूँ. So then it doesn't help. Only it helps to that extent कि वो सिर्फ express हुआ है. Only the person feels better. But if the person wants to move from guilt to remorse, then it's important to change the rigid thinking, rigid philosophy. So let's see the flexible belief. Flexible belief about such code violation. I don't want to break my moral ethical code, but that does not mean that I must not do so. Right? Then what is self-depreciation belief? I am bad person because I have broken that moral and ethical code. I have already explained the total person is bad. Here the unconditional self-acceptance belief. I am not a bad person if I break my moral or ethical code. I am a fallible human being who has done a wrong thing. See, telling that this thing is wrong which I have done, that particular thing is one thing.
Not a whole.
Not a whole. So in guilt, whole, here the same thing. Now let's see the example. Example of breaking moral or ethical code. Radhika broke one of her moral rules by bad mouthing one friend to another. मतलब दूसरे एक का दूसरे को बताया, दूसरे के बारे में गलत बताया, right? Rigid belief, I absolutely should not have bad mouthed my friend. Flexible belief, I really and because I did, I am a bad person. Flexible belief, I really wish that I had not bad mouthed my friend, but I am not immune from doing so, and nor do I have to be thus immune, right? And I am not a bad person for doing so. I am complex, fallible human being who did the wrong thing, right? One more example. Breaking moral or ethical code. Whenever I see people smoke, I feel an urge to smoke, right? This is regarding to guilt. If I have an opportunity to smoke, I take it even though I am trying to give it up. When I do so, I feel guilty about breaking my promise to my daughter, which I have made, that I would stop smoking and end up by engaging in other self-defeating activity to stop me feeling guilty, right? So this is about guilt. What is remorse? Whenever I see people smoke, I feel an urge to smoke myself. If I have an opportunity to smoke, I take it even though I am trying to give it up. When I do so, I want to feel remorseful rather than guilt. कि वो पिया है सिगरेट, तो वो पिया है, वो एक्ट इज बैड, एंड उसके बारे में रिजिड बिलीफ नहीं होना चाहिए. Again, flexible belief does not mean not doing anything about it. Learning also involved in flexible belief, and if I really want to, I can make efforts. Rather than guilty about breaking my promise to my daughter that I would stop, I want to engage in activity designed to help me to deal with my urges rather than engaging in other self-defeating activity to stop me feeling guilty. Now how about not living up to moral or ethical code? मैंने जो 5 बार नमाज का एग्जाम्पल दिया, right? या एल्डर्स को रिस्पेक्ट करने का समझो. If it is a very strong rule, say 6 बजे उठना है, ये that is elders को रिस्पेक्ट करना. या see there are two things, omission and commission. क्या होता है इसमें overlapping भी कभी-कभी हो सकता है, right? So what I am trying to tell is that not living up to a moral or ethical code, right, which you usually follow, but you don't do that, right? I must live up to my moral or ethical code. That is a rigid belief. I am rotten if I don't live up to my moral or ethical code. I would prefer to live up to my moral or ethical code, but I don't have to do so. I am not a rotten if I don't live up to my moral or ethical code. I am a unique person who failed to do the right thing, right? Let's see the example. Example of not living up to your moral code. Jack thought that giving to charity was the right thing to do, but he failed to give a donation on one occasion because he was in a hurry. वो जल्दबाजी में था तो डोनेशन नहीं दिया. I absolutely should have given a donation, and because I didn't, I am a bad person. This is putting oneself down. I really wish that I had given a donation, but unfortunately there is no law of universe decreeing that I absolutely should have done so. I am not a bad person for failing to do so. Rather, I am a fallible person who failed on this occasion to do the right thing. So what will happen? Again, the shifting will happen. One more example about not living up to moral or ethical code. Whenever I see people in trouble, I want to go to their aid. So I want to help them. But I am afraid to do so. When I fail to help others, I feel guilty about failing to live up to my moral code. And to punish myself, I harm myself in some way. So this is with respect to guilt. What is remorse? Whenever I see people in trouble, I want to go to their aid, but I am afraid to do so. When I fail to help others, I want to feel remorseful. That means remorse. Rather than guilty about failing to live up to my moral code, and to learn how to overcome my fear about helping others in trouble rather than harm myself in some way. Now the third element. Harming or hurting the feeling of someone else. That is the third important aspect of guilt. Rigid belief, I must not harm others. And self-depreciation belief, I am a selfish person if I hurt others. Flexible belief, I would prefer not to hurt others, but I am not immune from doing so, and I don't have such immunity. I am not a selfish person if I hurt others, rather I am a complex, fallible human being if I do so. So I am, if I say no, so that's the example where if I think that I am responsible totally for their feeling, then there will be a problem. But here I take responsibility of my own feeling and I accept that I am a complex, fallible human being. Example. Linda felt remorse for upsetting her partner when they decided to go to visit her parents rather than his. Right. Now the important is what she felt remorse for upsetting her partner. Her partner wanted to go to her parents' house, but she decided to go to her parents' house. Right, Linda, and they both are husband and wife. Now let's take the example. I upset him, which I must not do. And this proves what a bad, selfish person I am. My partner is upset about not seeing his parents and I am the cause of his upset. I wish I had not upset him, but sadly that does not mean that I must not do so. Right. I am not, now इसमें मुझे कबीर का दोहा याद आ गया जो लोग रिजिड बिलीफ होता है. कबीर कहते हैं अति हट कर मरमत बावरे हट से बात न होए. अति हट कर मरमत बावरे हट से बात न होए. जो जो भीगे कामरी त्यो त्यो बारी हो. कामरी मतलब जो कंबल होता है. Yeah, the meaning is what? Just like the blanket, जैसा जैसा वो भीगता है वैसे वैसे heavy होता है. The more you rigid you are in your approach, more miserable you will feel in life. That's the meaning of this Kabir's dua. And the same thing, if I attach attachment to my desire, then there is a problem. Having desire is not a problem, that I don't want to hurt my partner's feeling. It's a desire. But what is attachment to desire? I absolutely should not hurt my partner's feeling. It's attachment to desire. Wanting or wishing is fine, but then if I converting that into attachment, Buddha said attachment leads to misery. And many people, many great people, they have said, more the attachment to a person, more the misery. So that is the important thing. I am not a bad, selfish person, but fallible human being who upset him on this occasion. Let's up the example. Somebody you decided to go, not to go for wedding, and for that. So that act, and your wife or the person, other person is very upset. So that act is not from your perspective. That act you can say that, but not that I am bad because I think about myself, right? So that's the meaning of this. And that decision I can take from adult, right? Sometimes pleasing others is pleasurable. When pleasing others is pleasurable, when you do that from choice. When it becomes a problem, when you do out of compulsion and out of rigid belief and thinking that my worth will go down if I don't please others. That from guilt. And then what happens? Many people, they get emotionally blackmailed, right? From this, if they don't have their remote control of emotion in their hand. Now, the example of harming and hurting the feeling of someone else. Whenever I want to put my own interest ahead of those of my parents, they feel upset and I feel guilty about hurting their feelings. The consequence of this is that I put their interest before my own and don't do what I want to do. Remorse, whenever I want to put up my interest ahead, those of my parents, they feel upset. I want to feel remorseful rather than guilty, right? About hurting their feelings. I want to put my interest before their interest and do what I want to do rather than putting their interest before mine. So,
but why should one want to feel remorseful at all? One should not feel remorseful at all. Because you're not doing anything deliberately to hurt others, you're doing it to live your life.
that's what I said. Are we going to feel positive about negatives? Say negative is happening something outside. You will not feel like, say for example, your wife is very upset. You will not decide, are you going to feel very happy and excited? That means what? You can have remorse, regret, which is healthy negative.
That's her problem.
Yeah.
Her wrong person.
So what happens? We are now talking about indifference.
To other people.
Attitude.
Yeah. That is also, that is one extreme.
You don't care.
Yeah, that is other one extreme. See, we are talking about.
Because then that act will repeat. Because if you are indifferent, so chalta hai, next time bhi chalta.
So what happens, so that if you show your partner that you also care for a feeling, then what will happen? The regret is you can have a regret about it. Else what will happen? The person might think you don't care. I do care about you, and I wish I could have come with you.
It is a
Healthy thing.
If there is no remorse, then your body language also will go in the negative.
Yeah,
The other person will know that you are indifferent.
That is another way. Person may not learn.
Yeah.
Person may
and he will become careless then. Probably.
Then what will happen? Only my needs matter.
Yeah.
That belief will come in a relationship. But what happens? What we are talking? Your emotional interest first. That is what we are talking, and then others second. We are not talking only that my interest first, or only your interest first. Largely India or US में क्या difference है? US में they think
Only of them feel.
themselves. In India,
They think only of the
How the
other.
dictator thinks.
huh?
How the dictator thinks.
Yeah. So dictators, that's a belief. So therefore they believe others must behave the way I want. That is the philosophy of the belief of dictator, right? Guilt and 4 irrational beliefs, and remorse and 4 irrational beliefs, which will be very clear, right? Rakesh has violated his ethical principle and have lustful thoughts about his best friend's partner. Right, sexual thoughts about his friend's wife in his mind, and he's feeling guilty about it. Now here, in the first slide only I said thought, image, feeling, action. 4 things I said in the first slide. Sometimes people think that having only thought also is a sin, and therefore I am a sinner. Right? Now the important thing क्या है कि nature ने ये attraction create किया है. So it is fine to create, fine to have that thought. I can think about it. So that is the thing, right? But क्या होता है कि when rigidity, not accepting the reality, कि ऐसा thought आया, rigid demand absolutely must not have such thoughts. आना ही नहीं मांगता है बिल्कुल. It would be preferable for me not to have these thoughts. There is no law of universe which states that as a human, I absolutely must not have them. So, right. So, let's say awfulizing belief. It is terrible to have such thoughts. Anti-awfulizing belief. It is bad and unfortunate that you have such lustful thoughts, but it is not terrible or end of the world. Right. And see another 2 more belief with the same example. Low frustration tolerance belief में क्या होता है? I can't stand having such thought. I can't tolerate it. मुझसे बर्दाश्त नहीं होता. ऐसा कैसा आ गया? And then restless, and वो निकलना ही चाहिए. बिल्कुल रहना ही नहीं चाहिए. So and I can't tolerate. बर्दाश्त नहीं होता this thought itself.
In that case, the more every thought will come on. Yeah.
Absolutely. More you will try to push.
More you will try to get out, you will get more thought.
Absolutely.
Stress.
So, what is rational belief? High frustration tolerance belief. It is difficult for me to tolerate having such thoughts, they can be tolerated, and there is no evidence that you cannot stand them. You can stand them, it will not kill you. These thoughts will not kill you. These thoughts will go after some time. Self-depreciation belief, I am a bad person for having such thoughts. See, the point here is, and say for example, and here I am a fallible human being rather than a bad person. I can evaluate my thoughts but not myself as a total human being. Now, क्या होगा? See, हर एक रिलीजन ने कंडेम किया है इस चीज को, मतलब एक्चुअल एक्ट, करेक्ट। अब क्या है कि इस केस में ओनली थॉट्स आर कमिंग, राइट, नॉट नो एक्शन, स्टिल द फीलिंग ऑफ गिल्ट. So the important point is what?
It's okay.
So it's okay to have those thoughts. I would like not to get those thoughts, but it is not a must that. इसलिए क्या है कि जो भी values, morality, ethics, जो भी कुछ है, उसके बारे में it's important to be realistic.
Not rigid.
Not rigid. Else what happens? Then it's a kind of a punishment. और पर क्या होता है कि see, जो दुनिया में wars या major conflicts हुए हैं ना, वो religion और ये rigid इसके कारण ही हुए हैं.
I'll prove realistic. Aurangzeb killed his brothers, but he was realistic. He did not feel guilt.
So that is another issue. No? See, killing human being.
He doesn't think it is wrong.
Justify.
He justified himself.
इसका इसके लिए मराठी में बोलते हैं ना कर्मठ, means rigid belief.
Yeah,
rigid.
That means he must agree to my.
Or otherwise, he would have feel more and more guilty. Why I have killed my brother? Why I have killed? And more guilt will come on him.
Yeah. So what happens? See, the important point is what? Had it been he understood the essence of Islam, उसने वो ऐसा किया ही नहीं होता था. Correct. His motives were different behind that. Now we will not talk more about him because he's not alive. Because we do not have any
right
data
to say, yeah.
No, not right in the sense we cannot verify. Like you said something, I could ask some question. So then we will move on to another.
You would have said, if I have not become a king, what will happen? So I must do it.
Yeah. So. General guilt-related irrational belief and rational alternative. Like we have seen one specific example in there. What are the general things which are there? General, I must always act morally, ethically, and if I don't, that proves that I am bad. Right? All the time I must act. I want to always act morally and ethically, but sadly I don't have to do so. If I don't, it does not prove I am bad. It proves that I am ordinary human being who have done the wrong thing. Right. So that means what? Awareness is also there, and efforts are also there to be ethical and live up to the moral standard. Here we are not taking the other. No, I am not bothered, or I don't want that. So that is the thing. I must always put others first, others' interest first, and if I don't, I am selfish person. So if I think about myself, I am a selfish person. That means others' interest I must put first. I would like to always put others first, but it is not necessary for me to do so. If I don't, I am not a selfish person. I am a fallible human being who has acted selfishly on this occasion. So it can be possibly हो सकता है practical life में ऐसा. I must ensure my dealings with people that I don't hurt their feelings, and if I don't, I am a rotten person. So when I deal with the people, if I hurt their feelings, I am a rotten person, I am a bad person. It is preferable if I ensure that my dealings with people, I don't hurt their feelings, but I don't have to be successful in this regard. If I am not a rotten person, rather I am a non-rotten person who has done a rotten thing. So this act is rotten, but I am not a rotten person. So here the important, what will happen, because guilt में से क्या होगा, the person will not learn to that extent, because then you will, or even if the person learns, but वो खुद को बहुत disturb करके वो करेगा, But in regret or remorse, the person will be able to do that more effectively. Thinking consequences of guilt and remorse. And after that we will see behavioral consequences also. We have already seen this, the theme of guilt, violation of moral code, that sin of commission, sin of omission, and these are the three themes: guilt and thinking consequences, and remorse and thinking consequences. You conclude that you have definitely committed the sin. In guilt में क्या होता है कि मैंने पाप ही किया है. You take into account all the relevant data when judging whether or not you have sinned, right? पूरा नहीं तो क्या होता है? Let me give you some example. अभी एक घर में मैंने ऐसा देखा कि हस्बैंड वाइफ खाना खा रहे थे और खाने में पत्थर आ गया. अभी खाना वाइफ ने बनाया नहीं था, खाना जो है वो सर्वेंट ने बनाया था. But still wife said, oh sorry, sorry. So the important point is what? The wife started feeling guilty for the sin which she has not committed. मेरे पास जब काउंसलिंग के लिए कुछ क्लाइंट आते हैं तो आई हैव सीन क्या होता है कि कभी-कभी लिखता हूँ तो लिखते कभी पेपर नीचे गिरता है. पेपर नीचे गिर गया तो क्लाइंट मेरे गलती से गिरता है, पर क्लाइंट बोलता है सॉरी. So this oversensitivity is also one of the problems. Sometimes क्या होता है कि कुछ clients के लिए ज़्यादा time लगता है. Sometimes 1.5 hour also I give. तो client जाते समय बोलता है sorry आपका बहुत time लिया. So actually I decided to give that time to the client. Right. In one case I have seen where क्या हुआ कि झगड़ा हो रहा है husband wife का. And mother-in-law was also to a certain extent contributor, but she thinks that I am totally responsible for this.
कुछ एक sentence में हो that उससे start होता है.
Correct. But the important point is what they have also their choice. Husband and wife also what to do about it. So what happens? You take into account all the relevant data. What's the meaning of this? When judging whether or not you have sinned, right? Yeah, you assume more personal responsibility than the situation warrants in guilt. That is what I have already given the example. You assume an appropriate level of personal responsibility here, right? So you don't take over responsibility, but you take. See what happens. In one case, where the first example which I have given, जो 3 month का child को abort किया था. Where what happened in that case? Husband-wife का relationship काफी problematic था. वो शराब पीना, मारना, ये करना. So she decided to leave that person. I don't want to continue with this person. So still she was feeling guilty about that abortion. She could have chosen to be regret, and she was feeling for quite a long time. छोटा बच्चा भी देखते था ना तो रोना तो she used to feel miserable. कुछ साल तक रखी 2-3 मतलब see the thing had already happened. But because of her rigid philosophy in their mind, so more personal responsibility than the situation warrants, you assume an appropriate level of personal responsibility. जितना है, because what is guilt? In guilt, I take over responsibility.
Excess.
I take 100%. I take responsibility more than 100%, for which I am not totally responsible. So that's the most important thing. Guilt. Thinking consequences here again, you assign far less responsibility to others than is warranted. You assign an appropriate level of responsibility to others. Yes, just जैसा मैंने आपको example दिया कि वो mother-in-law का तो husband wife भी also responsible है ना उसमें. Equally responsible है वो चीज़ में. So that is the thing. You dismiss possibility. You dismiss possible mitigating factors for your behavior. You take into account mitigating factors. There can be mitigating factors, right? You take into account those things. You only see behaviors in guilt-related context and fail to put up into overall context. Again, you put your behavior into overall context. Overall context में आप देखते हैं situation. You think that you will receive retribution in next life. So अगले जन्म में भी मिलेगा. I have seen people की ये जन्म का अगले जन्म में.
Okay to suffer.
So you think you may be penalized rather than receive retribution. So you will be penalized for that act. but not in this life.
Yeah,
but
karma.
not karma, right? As a karma. नहीं तो क्या होता है, कुछ लोगों का अगला तो जैसा होता है, कुछ लोगों का पिछला भी ये करते हैं कि पिछले जन्म में मैंने अच्छा नहीं किया था ना, इसके लिए ये है, और इस जन्म में मतलब उसका फल मैं ये जन्म में भुगत रहा हूँ, और मतलब ये जन्म का फल अगले जन्म में, मतलब फल का भी फल भुगतना पड़ेगा. So they feel कि वो now they feel bad, guilty about पिछले जन्म में जो किया.
ये जन्म का गिल्टी फील होने का नेक्स्ट जन्म है.
So actually, so that's उसकी वजह से that is why I am suffering. That's the and there are some people who are propagating that philosophy कि आप जो है वो पिछले जन्म के कारण हैं.
But some people, many people are.
Most of the people.
That stops your action also.
Absolutely. Then you think that नहीं ये जो है सब लिखा हुआ है. ये लिखा होता है. Actually, it doesn't. I choose to write. If I change my attitude, I will write different thing. I can write a different script of mine.
You can make your own.
Change your destiny.
Yeah, change your destiny. या नसीब वगैरह कुछ नहीं होता है.
Write with different handwriting also.
Yeah, you can choose.
Because the future depends on present actions and thoughts.
Yeah. Whatever you are today is the byproduct of the past, and if you remain the same, your future will remain the same.
Says Swami Vivekananda says like that.
Yeah. So many
It
great
is
people
true.
have
It is
said.
true. What he said is true.
Yeah.
इवन एक कभी दुआ है इसके ऊपर कुछ.
हाँ, काफी है ऐसे, मतलब जो भी है वो.
But this thing about next life or previous life, this is relevant only for religions which are born in this part of the world, like Hinduism, Buddhism, and all that.
Yeah.
ये जो
The
है
major religions in that part of the
Christianity
world.
में भी है.
It's not heaven and hell. It's not next life.
अच्छा.
Judaism, Christianity, Islam, it's a question of heaven and hell.
No,
Not
but
next
it
life.
comes in the genes. Genes means I have seen one person. He did not pay the money. Nowadays his grandson become the robber. His grandson become a robber. He used to always embezzle money. नौकरी करेगा, चोरी करेगा, कुछ भी करेगा.
See what happens? It's not in the genes. Probably the grandson has observed the traits and learned those traits.
Maybe.
So yeah, no, it is learning. It's not a
It's a
genetic.
learning.
Behavior is a learning. Yes.
From childhood you learn.
ये जो है ये जो नसीब में जो लिखा है वैसे ही होगा. This comes from the belief system.
Yes, it's a belief system.
All your conditioning.
When you were a child
Conditioning.
small, you must have got it from parents. or something.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All conditioning.
Parents. जो parental figures है ना, conditioning. Whoever played the role of parent.
And the children mimic their parents only.
But you can't blame parents. They must have got it from their parents.
Yeah. So
वो
parents
chain
में
है
भी
ना,
ना,
chain
see,
reaction है.
parents में क्या होता है, biological, not only
No one.
biological, teacher, religion,
Priest.
priest,
You have to break that.
then culture.
तो किसको दोष देना चाहिए?
No one.
नहीं समझ गया. Once you understand.
Once you understand, you can change yourself.
The buck stops here.
Yeah. So else, वो क्या होता है? People remain then inactive. उसमें नसीब के पीछे बिलीफ कौन सा होता है? लाइफ कंडीशन मस्ट बी इजी. जो हमने लास्ट टाइम जो सेशन लिया था यहाँ पर कंफर्ट जोन के रिलेटेड बिलीफ होता है ना. क्यों नसीब? क्योंकि लाइफ कंडीशन डिफिकल्ट है. जो लाइफ कंडीशन मस्ट बी इजी. दैट्स वो जो है ना लाइफ रिलेटेड बिलीफ आता है नसीब के पीछे. सुपरस्टिशंस के पीछे ऑल लाइफ मस्ट का बिलीफ होता है.
The easy way out is to say, well, this is my life. That's it.
Yeah.
मेरे हाथ में नहीं है सब.
ऊपर वाले के हाथ में है. That is also another belief where the person think that कि ये है, but actually वो क्या है, हमें हमारे हाथ में जो है उसके ऊपर फोकस करना चाहिए. That's the most important. Guilt and unconstructive behavior. By these thinking consequences are at sea, as I said already. अभी जो बताया, अभी मैं behavior बता रहा हूँ कि guilt के जो behaviors होते हैं guilt में, और remorse में कौन से behavior होते हैं. You escape from, I'm reading this because we know all this, right? You escape from the unhealthy pain of guilt in self-defeating ways. So self-defeating ways करता है, self-destructive, self-defeating way. You face up to the healthy pain that accompanies the realization that you have sinned. Say, for example, अभी जैसा आपका एग्जाम्पल जो आपने दिया था. So you face कि नहीं भाई, मैं उधर गया तुम्हारे साथ. Let's hypothetically I'm giving this example. You decided to go for that talk, intellectual talk, and not for wedding. So I admit, then I accept, okay fine, because the important thing as we have said, the conflict होता है ना माइंड के अंदर, ये भी करो तो भी कुछ भी करो तो भी sin है, इधर नहीं गया तो you feel oh ये मैंने sin कर रहा हूँ, मतलब वेडिंग में जाके sin कर रहा हूँ, उधर नहीं गया उधर गया, उधर नहीं गया तो अरे उसके साथ नहीं गया तो वो भी sin है. So the point what I'm saying is that you have to face the pain. समझो अभी कुछ कभी कभी करते हैं ना, कोई कभी कभी I can do wrong things. So facing realistically that pain and admitting that sin is important, right? Rather than ये behavior, यहाँ पर क्या होगा? The person try to escape in a self-defeating ways, right? You beg forgiveness from person you have wronged. You forgive me, बार-बार मतलब अभी वो नहीं भी करता है. You ask but not beg. Difference है. Behavior. You ask for forgiveness but don't beg for, not beg for forgiveness. What behavior? You promise unrealistically that you will not sin again. Again, this is not possible because you understand the reason for your wrongdoing and act on your understanding. So you don't promise, but you understand the reason. You punish yourself for physically or by deprivation, right? You physically are punished or by deprivation. You are atoned for the sin by taking a penalty. A penalty later. Here, again, there are problems. You defensively, like let me give you an example. I have seen because